Was Abraham Lincoln a president?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was just a whatever publical figure.
Welcome back to Delulu Diaries, where the timelines don't match, but the receipts always do. Today we're going to be talking about the first quarter of 2026. I wanted to put it all in one video for you guys, but it's just going to be way too long if we do it that way. I want to go ahead and start with what happened at the back end of 2025 just to set the scene for where we're at. So basically, in the last quarter of 2025, Tammy threatened to sue Amberlynn, and around the same time, Amberlynn's channel got demonetized. My understanding is that it was demonetized because of her overeating videos, such as where she did the rotisserie chicken, the shrimp mukbang, things of that nature. Apparently she did get warnings but didn't act on them, and that is what led to her getting demonetized and why she took her entire back catalog of videos down. She said that she would be back in about a month after Tammy threatened the lawsuit, but she never returned, and I believe that's because she did get demonetized, and so we all know Amber is not going to work for free. She then announces that she's going to be on the LCU, specifically LCU bus with Sweet Tea and Scooter, and that whole thing is going to be starting on January 1st. The LCU begins to advertise that there's going to be some people coming on to discuss Amber's past. They give some insight into opponents of Amberlynn, if you want to call them that. Mostly Zay and Roxy. Those two members of the LCU were particularly vocal about not liking Amber and wanting to bring her past to light. Gidgee was playing nice and saying that they were going to give Amber a chance to speak on her past and redeem herself and correct any misconceptions that have been floating around. So that's basically how the LCU is being advertised. It was advertised as a show that Amberlynn was going to be on that was going to force her to face her past via deep dives and people in the LCU doing research. It was kind of made to sound like there was going to be a small hazing period, and then after that they would be welcoming her in, and it would be like any of the other hosts where maybe some of the hosts in the LCU don't like you, but for the most part, people within the LCU kind of give you a free pass, and you might have to deal with some people in the comments being nasty to you, but that it pretty much just washes itself away as long as you take accountability for what you've done. Despite the fact that she was supposed to appear on January 1st, there was a live stream done the day before. I believe it might have been the 30th of December. But basically, people in the chat were calling Amber a cat unaliver, and so Amber ended up going on to the live. Gidgee was there, and Amber was like, oh, you can call me anything you want, but that particularly bothers me. And rightfully, Gidgee says, hey, if that's something you don't want people saying, you really shouldn't say that that's what gets to you, because now that's all they're going to do. Amber kind of like falls into her fawning thing where she's like, oh, I know, and you're so right, you've been so nice to me, blah, blah, whatever. And then during the course of her being on the live, Zay pops up and says that she's done a ton of research, she's going to do more research, because Amber said something to the effect of Zay made up her mind based on Google searches and listening to detractor channels, which is what the LCU calls reaction channels. And Zay says, no, I've done a ton of research. I've been watching videos from your back catalog through people who re-upload that kind of thing. And, you know, I'm going to do a research project and ultimately make a deep dive against you or whatever, but I don't form my opinions based on what other people say. It's words out of your mouth. And then Zay dips out. So obviously people were getting excited about that. Roxy also popped up, if I'm not mistaken, and made some arguments against Amber, but that was very, very short-lived. I think that was in the same stream. It might have been a different one, but I'm pretty sure Amber only did one stream beforehand. But either way, Gidgee was clearly there to play nice cop and protect Amber from the hate or whatever. This whole time, keep in mind that they do know a little bit about Amber because Amber has been in the LCU Discord for a few months. So moving on to January of 2026, the show already kicked off to a bad start because apparently there was some miscommunication about the start date for LCU Bus, where I think it was Lolcow Queens. It was one of the other shows that was primarily female host, was supposed to do like an all-day thing. And so Bus was actually going to start on the 2nd. Because of this little miscommunication, a lot of people at the time were like, oh, watch, Amber already quit. She couldn't handle it because of the backlash she got on the late December stream. But clearly she was able to handle it and get back in or whatever, because it did end up that she was there for pretty much the first half of 2026. But it definitely was a lot of chatter that day when it got pushed back. The first week of the show was super obviously scripted. If you guys didn't see it live, it was very difficult to watch. I mean, Sweet Tea and Scooter were her co-host, and both of them were making excuses, trying to help Amber evade any consequences. They had this whole bit going where they were like, oh, we don't know anything about Amber. We haven't done any research. So people were sending in tons of money, A, to just disparage Amber and be rude, which, you know, pop off, do whatever you want to do. But it's kind of silly to send her money just to say these things to her. But then B, people were sending in things trying to inform Scooter and Sweet Tea of Amber's past. So basically they made a ton of money that first day just off of people being excited that they could make Amber listen to whatever they wanted to say, as well as people trying to inform Scooter and Sweet Tea. But it was very evident over the course of the first month that they did actually know some Amber lore on their own, because they would say things that just really hinted strongly that they knew what was going on. For example, somebody sent in a super chat quoting Amber's Rain and Petals poem, and right off the bat, without any context that it was a poem, just knowing that somebody had sent it in, Scooter goes, oh, that sounds like it's from a poem. Is it from a poem? And so they start talking about something else, and it naturally would have been a point to move on from it because the topic switched, but then Scooter brought it back up later, unrelated to anything. And so clearly he knew that part of her lore and was trying to get her to expand upon it. But yeah, so the first 2 weeks were really, really hard to get through, but the first week especially, because I don't know how they had the TTS going, but you could put in so many little emojis. And so I think that for a $20 TTS, you can put in, I think 250 characters, which is, the TTS is what gets read out. So basically somebody would say like, something nasty about Amber. I was going to give you guys an example, but then I realized YouTube's going to grab me on that. But they would say something nasty about Amber, and then it would be like, tomato emoji, tomato emoji, tomato emoji, tomato emoji, but like 15 of them. I was listening to the show while doing chores around my house, like laundry, dishes, things like that. And I know a lot of you guys listen to me when you're doing those chores too, so you know it is so annoying when you're listening to a video and there's a part you really want to skip, but you just can't stop what you're doing because you're in the middle of like getting dishes done. You'd have to take off your gloves, turn off the water, wash and dry your hands, get all the way over to your computer just to like skip forward 20 seconds. Like, it was a nightmare to listen to. It's also worth noting that the only super chats that actually get read out are $20 and above. So you can't just send in a $5 super chat and expect Amber to have to respond to it. But according to the LCU rules, if a $20 chat is sent in, the computer reads it out, so they have to hear it, and they have to respond to it. So people were sending in all this money because they're supposed to have to respond to it, but they were getting so many super chats that it's like they wouldn't even have time to respond to them before the next one would come in, especially since people were having so much fun making them irritated with the copious amounts of emojis that they were throwing in. I mean, you can still go and find Amber dancing to the whale emoji, whale emoji, whale emoji, and pig emoji and stuff like that too. And it got to the point where Amber started like begging for people to loop certain emojis so she could dance to it. I know for a fact Amber was playing a character for majority of the LCU, but the character she was playing is very similar to how she really is. Let's put it like that. And so there are moments where I feel like you can see through the mask a little bit. And I think that the emoji portion was part of it because she was really trying to play it off like it didn't bother her. But you could see that there were certain times where she did feel bothered by it, especially in the beginning before her skin got a little thicker. Not saying she has a thick skin before anybody wants to say that she doesn't, but I'm just saying in the early days, things really bothered her a lot. And so on top of the fact that she was trying to not get to the point of like leaving, because obviously she wanted the check from the LCU, you have all of the people in the comments spamming things that are hurting her feelings. And then you have Scooter and Sweet Tea having to pretend to be her friends. And then people are getting irritated at Sweet Tea and Scooter for pretending to be her friend because everybody can see through it and see that it's like clearly scripted. So, you know, I don't want to say that I feel for Amber, but I mean, what a crappy position to be in where you have two friends that you're not sure if they're really your friends or not. Hint, they're not. And then everybody in the chat all sending in money to say mean things. The only thing that definitely made that feel better for her is the fact that she was getting a ton of money to basically sit there and do nothing. For the majority of the whole month, all she was doing was focusing on like things like, oh, let's not let the Greys talk so that it'd be put to members only, which obviously drove up the amount of members being in there. She would crash out and cry a lot, and to the amount that it was actually pretty alarming that she was doing all of this with her pets in the room. I mean, I have maintained that if she wanted to take better care of her pets, she could, at the very least, put them into her bedroom, but she would have them out in the living room while she's like crashing out. So that was really not great. You can see her pets getting scared in multiple different lives of her screaming. She threatened to quit a lot. She made a lot of jokes and commentary about adult relationships, if you want to put it that way. She was grabbing at her chest. She was imitating doing fellatio and cunnilingus. And so it was just like a lot. And, you know, for somebody who claims to be very for the girls, she really showed herself to be very rude to people who work in the adult industry, as well as any women that she thought were better looking than her or more popular than her, which I know we know is a past characteristic of Amber, but she's going to say that this was part of a character, and I'm telling you right now that we've seen her act this way in the past, but it was amped up to like 11 on the actual LCU, and I think a big part of that is that I do believe Amber when she says that Keem told her to play it up. I just don't think that Keem really knew what her baseline level was like before he said that, because there's no part of Amber that needs to play it up. Also, she would not stop telling Scooter that he was fat phobic because of the thumbnails that he would create, which if you guys were around at that time, they were not that bad. Most of them were literally just pictures of Amber, and not even ones like, you know, sometimes reaction channels will try to grab the most silly version of how she's sitting that day, or like a silly face or something like that. The ones that they were using were actually very, very mild. So that was kind of crazy and really irritated a lot of people, myself included, because it's like, just let it go. That's how you look. But at the same time, that was clearly part of the script. I don't think she was genuinely upset about the thumbnails or anything like that. I think it's just, like I said, she was told to amp it up to 11. So we already know baseline Amber is annoying. And so being told to amp it up was going to be just horrible. And it was very difficult to watch. Now, despite the fact that they did not stand up to the advertisement of it being her having to face her past because they were so scared that she would quit and just leave them high and dry, they did have her stand up and show her body several times by making goals such as, oh, every $20 you have to walk to the door and back. And then also they did do a live weigh-in, which she said that she claimed to be 530 pounds. I'm going to see if I can put a picture in here for you guys, but there was another time when she was around 530 pounds and she weighed in at a hospital, and you can look for yourself, but to me, she does not look to be the same weight. Also, when she was getting on and off of the scale, the camera angle was like really funky. Also, it showed that it was like teared out incorrectly. I mean, it was just really difficult to say for sure that that was an accurate live weigh-in, and Amber was really irritated that people were not believing her, which, to be fair, I can understand, because if she were telling the truth, that would be unbelievably frustrating. But I just don't see how it could be unless the aging factor really makes her body look different. But just to me, it looks way, way different from her weigh-in at the doctor's office where she was like, I think 527 or something like that. Also, she does do some drinking streams, and she baits her blood pressure. She puts on the cuff and like has it where it's showing that she's like stroke out levels, and then she's like, oh no, I'm good to keep drinking, I'm good to keep drinking. And Scooter obviously is like, whoa, that's insane, you should not be doing that, like stop drinking, like cool down. And she was like very, very red at this time as well. After the fact, she posted a post somewhere, I can't remember where, it was a text post where she says that she was wearing it wrong when she was on the stream and it's actually fine, her numbers were never that high, blah blah blah. And to be honest, I wouldn't put it past Amber to wear it incorrectly in order to get a higher readout, but you could tell just by looking at her that she was extremely intoxicated and she was taking medication that she should not have been drinking with, and so that was very poorly thought out on her account. Like, that was not good for her health, which not like she really cares, but I don't like the fact that she drinks on medications she shouldn't be drinking on. And it came out that at this time, Sweet Tea was actually pregnant, and so when she was drinking, she wasn't really drinking. She was just pretending to be drunk. So there's no reason Amber couldn't have done that. However, we know she wasn't because, like I said, she was beet red during the stream. Like, it was very obvious that she was actually drinking. So at some point, I think around mid-January, they did have Roxy come up onto the show, and she started trying to give Amber some pushback by starting to talk about the Casey situation. And unfortunately, she got the age of Amber and Casey wrong. And so because of getting one detail incorrect, Amber was just yelling over her the whole time, being like, that's not correct, that's not true, you're lying. And then she was like really hyper fixating on that. So it got to the point where I believe Scooter, but it might have been Scooter and Sweet Tea both, were telling Roxy that, you know, she was just doing too much and that they didn't want her on the show anymore. And so they ended up booting her off. I mean, they really didn't give her a fair shake because she was trying to explain where she was coming from and they literally muted her, but they did not do the same to Amber to make it like a fair debate or anything like that. So that was really disappointing for those of us who did stay tuned to watch Amber be challenged on things. Other than that, they did set some goals to humiliate themselves, primarily Amber, but they all participated, such as dressing up like pigs, doing pie and whipped cream to the face, having Amber do like the walking back and forth and some minor exercises, which was clearly a disguise for just having her show her full body on camera. So, you know, there was a little bit of that going on, but that didn't last too long before Amber started refusing to do that kind of thing. They did also start to do some really annoying clickbait. I mean, I understand everybody to an extent has to do clickbait on YouTube, but they would say things like, oh, we're going to get Foodie Beauty up here. We're going to get French Fried Girl. We're going to get Beck. And they obviously shouldn't have said that because they were not going to do those things. No person has come up. They even tried to get like reaction channels to come on, especially like Jordy, because they were like, oh, come on, Amber. Jordy's not that bad. He could come up. But then they kept saying like, oh, he's too scared. He won't do it. Trying to like rage bait Jordy into agreeing to go on there, which Jordy rightfully said, I'm not going on there. And even if a reaction channel was going to go on there, they're not going to do it for free. You guys would have to like offer a cut or something, which Amber was not willing to do. Speaking of their cuts, Amber constantly would be complaining about her cut, saying that she deserved more money because she was the biggest star in the LCU and she didn't want to split her money 3 ways, which I don't think she was ever even at a 30% split. I think that she went on with a higher cut, but I don't have any proof of that. That's just my personal opinion on what went on. There was a picture of Amber standing with a fan that was circulating around this time, which I believe Amber blamed Boogie for sharing it on his lolcow show, but I don't know too much about that situation, just the fact that she was irritated that there was a picture circulating about her. And then on somebody else's show, I believe this was also Boogie's show, Scooter apparently leaks the script. So Scooter's talking to another host and they're like, I can't believe about this situation. And Scooter's like, oh, you think that I would just let her do that? Obviously, that's part of the script. I got her taken care of. And then he comes onto his show and he's like, oh, no, I faked the leak because of trying to protect Amber. Like, you know, I didn't want people to think she was really a horrible person because I forget the specific circumstance surrounding it, but it was about her crashing out over something super, super minor. So he's like, oh no, I was just joking. And then of course it comes out later that him faking the leak and the leak were all scripted as well. So that's around when I was like really done with the LCU, because it's like, what's the point of watching something where every single thing is fake? But I digress. So there was another rumor around this time that Yo Mama was caught having phone sex with Amberlynn by his wife. This was something that French Fried Girl brought up, and then Snowflake confirmed it on one of his videos, but the video since has been taken down. So unfortunately, I couldn't confirm myself that he had confirmed it, but I saw people online talking about Snowflake confirming it. There was also at this time a picture of Amberlynn with an adult toy circulating, and French Fried Girl implied that it was a picture that was made for Yo Mama that Amber had also sent to Emily. So nobody's really sure where it came from, but according to Amber, she has never posted it to the internet, and that it is revenge corn to have around, which, let me say right here, I don't care how much you dislike Amber. I think that it is really disgusting to post pictures of somebody in an adult situation that they don't want on the internet. Like, that is just not something to mess around with. That's not tea. It's not cute. Like, that should never have happened if it wasn't Amber herself who released the photo. And I don't believe it was. Getting back to LCU bus, Amber was like talking to Scooter and Sweet Tea about how people think she lies about everything, this, that, and the third. And so clearly they decided to write it into their script, and Amber could not have done a worse job acting. She decides that the lie she's going to go with that they can easily debunk is that she doesn't know who Shrek is. And it doesn't make any sense because they had already talked about Shrek in previous live streams, as well as the fact that that was Feline's favorite movie, supposedly, and back in Feline era, they were constantly talking about Shrek and how much they liked watching that together. So it just didn't make any sense. It was clearly a way for them to catch her in a lie, but she wasn't willing to give them like a real juicy lie to catch her in. So they just went with this stupid Shrek thing. It was really annoying to listen to because it just shows how dumb they really think that their audience is, that they think people are going to buy that that's a real thing that Amber would say and mean. Like, they didn't even call her on it at the time and say like, oh, I mean, you're clearly lying for a bit, like, you know, stop. They did tell her that she was clearly lying, but she wouldn't back down. And then the very next stream she came on and was like, yeah, no, I know what Shrek is. And that was kind of the end of it. Like, it was such a nothing burger. And that was what was so frustrating in all of January. Like, not only was Scooter and Sweet Tea like hyping her up all the time and helping her to get out of things and making excuses for things. Like, Sweet Tea would constantly be like, oh, well, not everybody can keep a cat in the house. Like, some people, their cats just get out, while completely disregarding the rest of the story. It was really frustrating on that end, but it was also frustrating because they really showed how stupid they think the audience is by doing these scripted bits and not even trying to really conceal it. Which, in my opinion, is because Keemstar doesn't care about having the most interaction on his show. He cares about getting people who are stupid to interact. So if you ever have heard of like casino logic with the whale, if you're in a casino and you're somebody who will spend all night long consistently spending thousands and thousands of dollars, you're considered a whale, and they want those kind of people. They don't care if they lose a couple people who are going to come to the casino and spend $100 a night. They want the people who are going to come and spend thousands. And I feel that that is Keemstar's personal philosophy for the LCU. He doesn't care if people who really want to see what's going on are going to hate the fact that they're doing all this fake scripted stuff. He wants the people who are going to send in thousands of dollars a month to be like, that's not true, and here's the receipts, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care what it is. He just wants you to be upset enough to be spending money. So if you're smart and that dissuades you from following the lore, then he doesn't want you there anyways, is my opinion. That's just my take on it. Anyways, dipping out from the LCU, a couple of other things going on towards the middle end of January was allegedly Emily was cheating with somebody in Canada. Amber claims that they were on a brief break at this time and that she was also talking to other women, so it was not cheating, but I don't think we ever got full confirmation on that. Also, Beck unfortunately had a surgery that did not go very well. they're okay, but they ended up getting some kind of infection or something like that. And so, you know, that was obviously not fun for people who support Beck to hear. And then, because like I said, they clickbaited having Beck on, they literally did a donation goal where they collected a bunch of money for them to reach out to Beck and have Beck on the show. Beck had to come back to their community page and post that they would not be on the LCU ever, ever, ever. And the LCU kept the donation goal money, which people feel two different kinds of ways about this. On the one hand, the goal was to literally reach out to see about getting Beck on the show. So they did that part. They reached out to see about getting Beck on the show. Beck said, no, what are you going to do? On the other hand, people are like, oh, well, you scammed because you said that you'd have Beck on the show. Beck said, no, we should get our money back. But ultimately, I fall on the side of, yeah, they said that they would reach out to get Beck on the show. Obviously, they don't have any control to make that actually happen. So you do have to like use your own ability to think about the likelihood of things happening. Like just because you pay money for something doesn't mean it's going to happen if it's involving a third party who the LCU doesn't control. So you can let me know down in the comments below if you think that that was a total scam. I think it was scummy to do, but I don't think it was a scam. Like, I think they could have guessed that Beck wasn't going to go on, and so setting the goal to begin with was kind of in poor taste, but they said that the goal was to reach out to Beck. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. At some point during this time period, Amber ends up talking about Snowflake's kid and divorce, and that really got under Snowflake's skin. So, he was doing his little videos recapping the LCU as well at this time. And he said that in his video, Emily was not the only girlfriend with loose lips, and that he was pretty much heavily implying that he was talking to Jade behind the scenes. However, he didn't say that he was specifically talking to Jade. He just implied very heavily that it was her. So it really could be another minor side character, but a lot of people believe that he was talking to Jade behind the scenes. He also said that he has a source that has told him that Amber has had incontinence issues in the bed on occasion and still does, which is plausible because she's had a hysterectomy and she is extremely overweight. But it's worth noting that this has been speculated since 2018 because Beck once accidentally bought incontinence pads instead of period pads. And so I don't know what the timeline for the bladder issues would be. I'm just letting you guys know what Snowflake said. I can't even confirm that it's true or not true. I'm just passing on what happened during January of this year. Anyways, after that, Jordy shares pictures of Emily at Disney with her kid. Now, he thankfully blurred out the photo of the kid, but basically just a viewer of his sent pictures. And so we could see Emily out and about at Disney World, and when we saw that, obviously we could see that she has gained some weight since being with Amber, which nobody's really super surprised about. Back on the LCU, towards the end of January, Amber was really leaning into just doing silent strikes in the live streams. Like when the hate would get too much or she just didn't like what people were saying, she would just say nothing, which left Sweet Tea and Scooter to kind of scramble to make content while she's not participating but still getting paid. She also was flirting with a lot of the LCU men, especially like Albert, which I think is Tina's son, and Yo Mama. She got very flirty when they were on stream. During this time, Jordy also got a privacy strike on a video that had Emily in it, which I'm guessing is the one that was with her with the kids or whatever. I don't recall exactly which one it was, but it seemed pretty clear that Emily was the one putting in the privacy strike. Amber reiterates that she did not steal Beck's inheritance, and she said that she gave Beck a lot of money after they broke up until Jade said that she felt uncomfortable with Amber giving money to an ex. So still, we see Amber insisting that Beck got a fair shake, but I don't believe her on that. That just doesn't seem like a realistic thing. I would be more inclined to believe Beck on that. Amber also at this time says that the past is off limits, so nobody can talk to her about her cat or her past girlfriends or anything like that. She just doesn't want to talk about that. But also, we can't talk about Emily. That's also an off limits topic, which leaves Sweet Tea and Scooter to be like, well, what the heck are we supposed to talk about? Like, if we can't talk about your past controversies, which as a reminder is how the show was advertised, and we can't talk about your current girlfriend, that doesn't really leave a whole lot to talk about. So they start getting irritated, and they do introduce a little bit more pushback, mostly on Scooter's part. Sweet Tea is still supposed to be like the good cop at this point. They do get a reaction channel to come back up onto the stream. It's Milky. Her @ is Milky Chai. And they appear and give Amber some pushback, but it doesn't really go too far. People seemed to like their appearance on the stream, but I don't know. It still wasn't anything super major in my opinion. Like, it was more entertaining than the Nothing Burger that we had been getting, but it wasn't like some revolutionary, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened kind of thing. After that, Sweet Tea did get fired from Bus for being too nice, and I felt like this was kind of, I don't know. On the one hand, people were telling her to stop being so nice and that she needed to start pushing back on Amberlynn, but so much happens behind the scenes. I do fully believe that she was told to play good cop, which she kind of hints at pretty strongly. But either way, she ends up flashing the camera. I think she was wearing pasties or something like that, but the stream still got completely taken down because of that. And so, we can't really see her argument again. After that, they of course had tryouts for a new intern. It was incredibly difficult to watch. I mean, I would pretty much classify January as the worst time in the LCU era. It was just really challenging watching them try to get their footing. During the tryouts, Brian Cook was pretty decent. He actually did have some pretty good moments. He also revealed that he was the one that was in Jordy's live stream when Romeo was in the background and pointed it out so that Amber had to do the reveal. And he has since started his own reaction channel on YouTube. I don't know if he still posts, but again, his name is Brian Cook if you guys want to check him out. Either way, Fupa Cheese is the new host that's hired. Amber claims that she's worked really hard to the point where she hasn't seen her mom in a month because LCU Bus is just taking up all of her time. And that's pretty much where we end January at. Moving into February, the LCU blocks Emily's name in the bus chat, so you can no longer say the word Emily in there. Amber also reiterates that it was Emily, not her, that let the cat out, and won't address the fact that they disagree on some pretty serious stuff, both the Rarity situation as well as if Amber kicked Emily or not, because Rachel reached out to Emily and said, hey, did you lie? And Emily said no, and that is not what Amber says. So despite Amber saying that they're in a healing era, that just doesn't make any sense to me, because how can you be in a long-term relationship with somebody where you fundamentally disagree on any kind of mistreatment or, the tragic end of a pet? Amber brings out a new Rarity story wherein she says that the door was actually open for 2 hours and that when she noticed, her anxiety was so high, she had no idea what was happening. People did ask if she checked to see where the animals were, and she just said that she was in a toxic high-stress moment. So we can pretty much take that to mean no. Despite Amber's several versions of events, Emily's version has never changed, so I feel more inclined to believe closer to what Emily has to say, but Emily was not at the house, so we'll never know for sure what happened. Supposedly, Amber should have been able to come back to YouTube early February. I think it was like the 1st or the 2nd that she was supposed to be able to come back, but that didn't happen, and she later revises the date that she was allowed to come back. Fupa did start giving some decent pushback to Amber, which was kind of refreshing because, like I said, we had Sweet Tea doing the good cop thing, so it was kind of nice to see somebody coming in with some knowledge of the lore. Unfortunately, at this time, taking away from actually seeing some decent pushback, doxing became a huge issue in the side chat. So Amber's address was being literally spammed in there, as well as people were talking about doxing other people in the Amberverse. So it was just really disheartening to see that finally the show was heading in more of a correct direction for what was advertised, but then the viewers themselves made it kind of a downer because they had to start moderating chat a lot more. At this time, Amber also started to refuse doing any goals or punishments, so she wouldn't do the walking around anymore. She didn't want to do pie to the face. She didn't really want to do anything. She would just sit there and talk and do her little crash outs and things of that nature, but she wouldn't actually let them set a goal for her to do anything, which is kind of how the LCU operates, is based on doing goals for stuff. Amber also really gets much more into her weirdness regarding touching her chest and making these derogatory insults regarding adult situations. And so that was really gross to watch. I also don't remember exactly what the situation leading up to this was, but there was some chatter about a Rosie talking about Amber negatively, and Amber thought that it was Rosie, like Quirky Love Rosie, which is her friend. I don't know who the actual Rosie was. I don't think it was the Rosie on Glass, and that's why I don't really know what was going on with the situation, because I was kind of lost as to who the Rosie that they were talking about even was. But regardless, Amber ended up spilling tea on her friend Rosie, only to find out moments later that that's not even the Rosie that they were talking about. And the tea she spilled was pretty light. I think that she was just saying that Rosie was on some large women websites, if you catch my drift, or something of that nature. It wasn't really surprising. Anybody who knows Rosie already speculated about that. So, it wasn't that huge of a deal in my eyes, but Rosie really took it personally, obviously, because that was supposed to be her friend. That was really messed up of Amber to do. And so Rosie did put out a little video basically being like, hey, you really hurt my feelings. That was messed up to do. I wouldn't have talked to you. You really couldn't talk to me first before spilling my secrets out to the world, which I thought was a super fair and honestly reasonable take. Then we get another leak from the bus crew where usually they use OBS to stream on Kick and on YouTube at the same time. And so apparently they had ended the stream on YouTube, but not on Kick. So we see Tech, Fupa, Keem, and Amber talking behind the scenes where they're all buddy-buddy, and Keem starts talking about how he doesn't want to protect Emily anymore, that she seems like a bad person. He brings up the idea of potentially doing a speed dating on a live stream, which Amber vehemently declines. She really, really does not want to do that. So obviously there is speculation as to if this was a real leak or if it was scripted. To me, I feel that it was scripted, but that Amber did seem pretty genuine about not wanting to dump Emily or do any speed dating or anything like that. So I believe that while it was scripted that they were going to do something where they ran long and were all friends with each other to drive engagement, I don't think it is scripted it's not like a play where it's literally line for line. I think that they just decided that they were going to pretend to end the live stream. The Emily thing came up kind of organically, and I do believe that Amber's distress surrounding the situation was genuine, if that makes sense. It's around this time that we also get Amber's iconic "I don't want to talk about it" meme, which was in reference to Fupa saying that Emily is into larger women to their detriment. Amber sticks to her story that that was only ever done for money. Keemstar doesn't want to block people from talking about Emily since that's the biggest story that was going on with Amber at that time. And obviously Keemstar wants his money for it. So basically Amber freaks out and leaves the stream for a little while. And that's where we get the "I don't want to talk about it." She said, "I don't want to talk about it," because Fupa's everybody already knows that Emily is into that. Amber says, "I don't want to talk about it," and then she cuts out. Amber does come back onto the stream in just a little bit, and then that's when we get the revised date of when she can come back, and she says, "Oh, well, I get my channel back in 9 days anyway, so it doesn't matter," which, spoiler alert, she did not get her channel back in 9 days. At some point during February, I don't remember the exact timeline, Boogie says something to Amber, just some rude little jab about her weight, and she says that because Boogie lied about cancer, that she wishes that he would get cancer and know what it's really like. She also makes a couple of comments during the month of February directed at people sending in hate to her, saying that they should end themselves. So with what we know about the Discord era coming up, I will put that in part 2. But this does seem like a pattern of actions from her where she does tend to tell people to end themselves. Then there's some drama with Scooter that goes over a couple of different lives. Basically, Scooter quits the LCU because he said some nasty stuff about Sweet Tea that got back to her. And then also allegedly he had sent multiple pictures of fans with no clothing on to Keemstar. Amber, despite being for the girls, defended Scooter, which was so confusing to me because, like, you're already disliked enough. Why would you stand up for somebody who has allegedly sent that kind of photo out, especially with how she has been treated with her own photos circulating? But regardless, she defends Scooter and says that he's her friend, and I believe that this is genuine and not part of the script. If you guys disagree, you can let me know in the comments below, but I believe that her defending Scooter was a genuine, like, that was how she felt. Someone then spills that Scooter was talking negatively about Amber behind her back, and then she suddenly flips on him. Now, before anything too serious happens, I think it was Gidgey, one of the female hosts, was like, why would you believe somebody else so fast, especially after you just spilled tea on your friend Rosie? And then all of a sudden Amber's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I should talk to Scooter first. So, like, she just doesn't learn her lesson ever. She ends up getting back onto Scooter's side, and as far as I know, she never gets off of Scooter's side. So that's crazy to me, but regardless, he comes back, and then I think he leaves again, but ultimately he stays gone. I just know that at one point he does come back, and he confirms that he sent one photo to Keemstar, so we can at least say that he sent one, but Amber is still on his side to this day. So just keep that in mind when we do talk about things that happen with Amber and her photos. I don't think that makes her, like, deserve it, but I do think that that should come into account when we're deciding how bad to feel about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she deserves it or that it should happen, but I do think that it's disgusting to have something happen to you that you don't like and then just be totally fine hand-waving it if your friend does the same thing to somebody else. At this point, she's also constantly talking about the contracts, not only about not being able to say stuff because it's, like, against the NDA, but also things in her contract about, like, what her monetary split is or what she's allowed to talk about. And frequently, like, it heavily implies that she is forced to play some kind of character, but that she's not allowed to talk about it because of the contract. But obviously she said it enough that we understood what her meaning was. So I don't even think that was, like, really in the contract or anything like that. I think that that is just something Keem suggested that she do because, like, tell me how that makes sense to be like, oh, I can't talk about how I'm being forced to play a character because my contract says not to. But then you've already said the quiet part out loud. So it was just really annoying. I mean, it was getting to the point where this was being brought up, like, pretty much every single stream. And it was very repetitive and just grating to hear at a certain point. Because, like, oh my gosh, just move on to something else. Because of the fact that Scooter did ultimately leave, Tech comes on to replace Scooter as the LCU bus host alongside Fupa and Amber. Off of the LCU, Salty Crab unfortunately also got banned from YouTube at this time, which likely comes from posting LCU clips, but I don't know if there was ever a definitive, like, this is why Salty got banned. I just know that as of today, Salty is still banned. However, if you liked Salty's content, there is a similar content creator that you may enjoy called Karma's a Cat. So you can check them out. They're very similar and kind of put off a similar vibe. Now, getting into the end of February, there's a live stream where Amber is made to show the back of her neck, and it's very brown and discolored, and obviously people were like, oh my gosh, look, this confirms that you never wash the back of your neck. She claims that the markings was from hair dye during the actual live stream where she shows it. And then in another live stream, I think it's like literally the next one, she says that it was makeup. There's still some speculation as to what was really going on with that. Obviously, nobody believes the hair dye thing because I don't think that she's ever dyed her hair. I know she had it bleached at one point, but I don't think she's ever, like, dyed it dark. To me personally, it did look like maybe some skin discoloration, just like she has on her knuckles, along with potentially her actually putting makeup or something to make it look dirtier back there, because honestly, they had already talked previously about the rumors regarding the back of her neck. She knew that they were going to be doing these kind of goals, so I believe that she would have taken whatever steps necessary to clean the back of her neck in case they did that. But, you know, it's really difficult to say. I believe she could have some slight discoloration from insulin resistance, and I think that she just played it up for the bit. But I could totally see it not being played up as well. Amber also claims at this time that she no longer uses washcloths, which I will try to link the video where I talk about that situation if you are out of the loop on that. But she says she no longer uses washcloths after going to the bathroom. Somebody asks to see her prove that she could reach back there, and she tells us that the way that she does it is by wedging her hand between her body and the toilet back. And so there's no way for her to demonstrate it without sitting on the toilet, which to me doesn't really add up because you have a computer chair that has a back. So if you wanted to demonstrate, surely you could recreate the physics right then and there. At the same point, I don't really have any desire to see Amber try to reach back there. So, you know, I know some people are very interested in that. For me personally, it's just too gross to think about. So I don't even want to see a demonstration. At this point, the 9 days that Amber said she needed to be able to be monetized is up. So she does do a live stream on her channel to get the viewership hours. But according to her, she never reapplied because she was just having too much fun on the LCU. Keep in mind, at this point, she was doing like daily meltdowns to the point where like she was leaving the stream sometimes because she was getting so irritated. So I don't really believe that she never reapplied because she was having fun on the LCU. I think it was either laziness that she didn't want to go back to her channel, or that there was some behind the scenes messing around that caused issues where she couldn't get remonetized and had to do some extra steps. She also claims that she fell in the shower around this time, and that's why she was walking kind of funny in the streams. But she brought it up like it was a funny anecdote, and I don't think that that's something that she would actually say that it was funny if it happened. So for me personally, I believe that that was a lie. She also says that she's going to be starting the pill version of Wegovy soon, but it does take her quite a while to start on that. She claims it's because it takes time for the pill to be shipped to her, but I mean, it really went on for a while before she mentioned starting to take it. There were also some rumors at this time that Amber was asking for people that were talking in the Discord's full government names, which obviously everybody was like, no, we're not giving you their full government names. And so that was kind of a whole thing. There was a really big back and forth about the bus Discord, if it was even worth having anymore, because there was just like a lot of issues going on in there with Amber banning people. Apparently Fupa banned one person and Amber was like on her ass about that. So there was a lot of drama about potentially just deleting bus's Discord server because of that, but ultimately they were able to figure it out and keep that up. Amber also says as soon as Scooter left, which I think was around mid-February, that she wasn't going to be going to Fat Camp without him, and she keeps that narrative up for the whole of February, saying that she's not going to Fat Camp because of Scooter, and it just doesn't make any sense. I think she knew she wasn't going to go to Fat Camp from jump, but that this is a convenient excuse for her. Around this time, we also hear that Amber's neighbors filed a noise complaint against her, and that now she has to film in her bedroom and not crash out anymore. So this leads Fupa to yell much more, mostly saying things like, get evicted, Amber. And also Fupa and Keem think it's really funny to ask Amber to get evicted to try to rile her up so that she gets evicted, because obviously that would be good for the storyline. Keem really tries talking her into it, and it's just so stupid because, first of all, why would you move house and like annoy your neighbors if you don't have to? And second of all, like, Amber is not going to want to do that. Like, she's not going to ever be convinced to do work when the option to not do work exists. She's not going to want to pack up her entire apartment and move to a new place just for a little bit of LCU fun. She finishes out the month of February by continuing to flirt with the men of the LCU with her new target set on Ken. Ken came on to do a fill-in stream when Scooter couldn't be there one day, and he did jumping jacks, and she was looking at a particular part of his anatomy during the jumping jacks, and after that, there was like this very flirty vibe between the two of them. People were pointing it out in the comments, and she was giving him like the batting eyes and fixing her hair and things like that. Just weird behavior coming from somebody who claims to be a lesbian, which, to be fair, I don't want to ever question somebody's sexuality, but it reads as weird to me personally. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and dip into March, which is the last month that we're going to be talking about in this video. If you guys remember us talking in January about Zay bringing up doing a deep dive on Amber, at this point, Zay is told that she is no longer allowed to do the Amberlynn deep dive, and that she's also not allowed to talk about Amber on her channel anymore because her and her co-host Rosie have been talking about it way too much, according to Keem. So this kind of creates a rivalry more than there already was between Bus and Glass. Also at this point, Keem is starting to get very, very sick of Amber's crap. Like, it is becoming more and more obvious to the audience that while he does play it up for the bit at times, he's also getting really tired of getting these constant calls, messages, everything from Amber. Like, it is a full-time job trying to wrangle her. Clearly, it's still worth it to him for the money because at any time he could release her from her contract and get her off of the show, but you know, it's just one of those things where he's like, it's worth it for what it's bringing in, but it's annoying. He's no longer being as nice as he was back in January and February. Also, there's this big disagreement between Tech and Amber, which is one of the most major plot points before Fat Camp starts, where basically Amber says that in a meeting before the show, Tech told her that she was going to take a BPD test, and she said she didn't want to do it, and he said, "You're gonna do it." And because of that, she was like, oh, Tech doesn't respect women's boundaries. He made me do something that I didn't want to do, because they did do the test on stream, apparently. I missed the stream, so I can't tell you what happened on the test, but apparently they did the test, and Amber was basically saying that Tech was forcing women to do things. Because of the way that she phrased it, Tech was extremely irritated and started popping off about her a lot. And in the super chats, somebody said something about Emily being into larger women and that community, and so she should be reported to the board, the nursing board for her state, and Tech was like, yeah, maybe she should. And oh my gosh, that caused Amber to go into the biggest meltdown, which I believe was a genuine meltdown, not something that was pre-planned or anything like that. She starts freaking out on Tech, threatening to quit the LCU, calling Keem in, saying Keem needs to do something about this situation, that it's going IRL and Tech needs to be fired. So obviously, Keemstar comes in to try to mitigate the situation, and while this is all happening, Emily sends a text to Amber saying that they are breaking up because of the IRL stuff. Amber shows that on stream and goes, "This is too far. My girlfriend's breaking up with me because of this." She's pushing for Tech to get fired. Keem doesn't want to fire Tech. In the LCU, there's this whole big thing about doing punishments, and so Keem's like, look, Amber, this is your chance. If you just, apologize to Tech for what you said about him making women do things that they don't want to do, then we can have him shave his head, because that's what Tech agreed to. Tech was like, listen, I don't want it coming off like I'm forcing women to do things that they don't want to do. That was like a really big sticking point for him. Honestly, to the point where it was kind of like cringy, to be real, because Amber did say it in kind of a weird way, but it was very obvious that she wasn't making any serious allegations against him, but he was like making it way more serious than it needed to be. But either way, because of all of this, Keem really is pushing Amber to just apologize so that Tech will shave his head. He's like, oh, it'll be so funny. You'll get the W. You should do this. But he can't get Amber on his side. So then he switches tactics, trying to get the audience on his side. And the audience is all saying, no, we don't want Tech to shave his head. And so ultimately Keem has to abandon it, but he brings it up like one or two more times later on. So that was something that Keem really wanted, but he just couldn't get Amber or the audience on board. I don't really remember how they resolved it. It seemed like Tech and Amber just kept this really big irritation between the two of them for the rest of their time working together. So I don't think it was ever fully resolved. I think it was just something that they agreed to move on from, but it was very tense for several live streams in a row. Also at this point, Fupa is like talking less and less, to the point where people are bringing it up a lot in the comments. Like, she is really saying practically nothing in most of the live streams. And I do think that had a lot to do with the fact that Tech and Amber were kind of going at it a lot. So she wasn't really needed in that sense. Like, she didn't have to say anything because there was enough content going on without her saying anything. She does, however, start up this little romance with Phantom where she, similarly to Amber, is being very explicit in an adult manner, with Phantom saying things like, I can't wait till we get to Fat Camp. I'm gonna do all of these adult things with you. And so when she does talk, it's mostly about that. Over on Glass, Zay makes her human to human song in the AI generator. And basically, when she was planning on making the deep dive on Amberlynn, Amber sent her this really long text being like, hey, listen, I understand that you're going to make this deep dive on me. And if you do, you're going to bring up Colleen. But I want to remind you that Colleen and Emily only did what they did for money. And Colleen is still a person. So, you know, please don't bring that up or something like that. I mean, that was the basic gist of it. And I'm not going to lie, like, I don't like the AI music that the LCU uses or anything like that, but it was pretty entertaining to see Amber's super, super long text be turned into a song. But like I said, Zay was told she's not allowed to do the deep dive, so it kind of became a moot point. But people really liked this human to human song that they did. So I think it eventually became the TTS for Glass, and it would get requested a lot on multiple shows between Hero, Bus, and Glass. Mid-March, just before Fat Camp, Amber did start taking the Wegovy pill as she said she would. Some people say she wasn't taking it. I believe that she did take it for a short period of time. I just don't think she stuck with it for very long. She also got irritated because she found out that everybody's contracts are different. So the whole month of February, she was talking about her contract and you know, the NDA that she signed and how she couldn't say this, that, and the third, and she couldn't go over to her channel and live stream because she's not allowed to live stream because of the contract. She can create vlogs, but not live streams. And then she talks to Jaffe, who is the host on Crypt, I believe. And he's like, oh, well, I didn't even sign a contract. Like, I can do whatever I want. You don't have to sign that bullshit. And so Amber gets really irritated and talks to Keem, and Keem's like, yeah, you didn't have to sign it, but you did. So that becomes a whole thing. Keem offers to like let her out of the contract or something. Like they discuss the contract a little bit, but Amber ultimately decides to stay in her contract. And I don't know if he would have like gotten rid of it completely or just changed the terms, but obviously that's business talk, so we were not privy to the rest of that. At this point, everybody goes to Fat Camp, but Amber keeps to her word and doesn't go, quote, because Scooter's not going. And so as a way to keep Bus together, they have Tech and Fupa live at Fat Camp, and then Amber's just in a little box in the corner on her webcam, making commentary as they're talking in person and participating. And again, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh, like, I think that it would have been really good for her to go to Fat Camp. It's not what it says on the tin, like, it's not actually a place to go and get in shape or anything like that. So that's not even the reason I'm saying it, but she really could have had an opportunity to socialize with a lot of people, get to meet people. A lot of it is just hanging out. And so I think it would have been in her best interest to go. Keem really wanted her to go, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get her there, no matter what the accommodations was. Pretty much everybody knew that the scooter thing was BS and that she just didn't want to go because it was either going to be hard to get there or she was worried about the accommodations they would have when she was there. But obviously they have a lot of larger people on the LCU, and so Keem's already used to making accommodations for people of larger sizes, and he offered to go pick Amber up himself. So it was just kind of disappointing, although not surprising that she didn't go, because I do genuinely think that would have been good for her to be able to get out, socialize with people, especially people of a similar size to her, and just hang out for a while. At this time, a picture of Amber and Emily at Thanksgiving dinner is leaked. It's really kind of a nothing burger, but Amber doesn't like that it's out, so of course it's drumming up a lot of conversation. Also, people keep saying that Amber is bedbound because ever since she got that noise complaint, she's been in her bedroom streaming in the bed and she refuses to stand up or do anything. So people are like, oh, she's not participating in walking around anymore for money because she can't, which makes sense because, I mean, oh my gosh, if I could get $20 to walk from my desk to my door, I would do that in a heartbeat. Like, it's not like it's hard or humiliating. I mean, maybe a little bit because of the full body picture of her, but at the same time, like, she's already done it. People know what her body looks like. It's not like it changes that quickly. So I don't know. It seemed to have a lot of believability, the fact that she was potentially bedbound. Now, eventually she did stand up and start walking around and proved that that was not the case, but I believe that she purposefully was sitting in bed and not moving around on screen in order to drum up this controversy so that people would be sending in money to point it out. During Fat Camp, Tech does get engaged to his longtime girlfriend, and Amber has like the worst timed mini crash out because while he's getting engaged, she's like reading the comments and stuff. And then instead of letting Tech have his moment of getting engaged, she starts like calling out commenters and being like, that's not true, or you said this, but blah, 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 to the point where Keem has to like literally scold her live on air, being like, hey, this was Tech's moment. Like, why are you popping off? You should just let Tech have his moment. And she literally responds by being like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to know that we're focusing on Tech right now. Like, we're focusing on Tech. Why am I even here? We didn't have a meeting about this beforehand. And it's like, do you really need to have a meeting to know that when somebody's getting engaged, it's not about you and you should just like wait for the moment to pass before you do anything? And it like really boggles my mind. Like, what do you mean if it's not about me? Why am I here? You are literally part of this team. Whether you like Tech or not, he is your coworker, and it would be really weird to not give your coworker a moment to celebrate something and just be quiet. It's not like it was going to take all stream to celebrate or anything. They just needed like 5 to 10 minutes to kind of be in celebration mode. I think it's pretty clear that she was just salty, A, because she wants to be engaged more than anything, and that is not going to happen with Emily, and B, because everybody's in person, hugging them, giving them congratulations, and she's just sat alone in her room by herself, you know, like, that would make me feel some type of way too, because obviously you want to be there with everybody who's celebrating and not alone in your room. A little bit after this, Amber does go on to get Tech fired, which I know sounds crazy coming right off of the engagement. It wasn't like back to back, but basically they had a couple streams in between the engagement stream and this where things were a little bit rocky because they're still on bad terms from the whole argument that they had earlier. And so Amber starts getting a lot more pushback from Tech. So she calls Keem, which the whole thing was live streamed on, I think it was Lolcow Live. She calls Keem and is like, Tech is just getting to be too much. I don't like working with him. I don't want to do this anymore. You need to fire him or I'm walking. And so obviously Keem says that he's going to fire Tech. They go on to do this whole long live stream that's like Tech's goodbye live stream, and they earn a lot of money because people are trying to like prove Amber wrong, which obviously this was part of like their trying to get money for nothing. Like, I think this was fully scripted. I don't think he was ever really on the chopping block. So they raise a lot of money to the point where it's getting close to breaking an LCU record. And then Keem says, if you guys hit the record of $7,000 in super chats, Tech, you can stay. And so people start donating even more. And they get to the 7,000 mark. And I'm not going to lie, even though it was very obvious that it was just in order to drum up money and that it was manufactured, it was kind of exciting, like, seeing them celebrate it. Like, you could tell that Tech felt some genuine excitement in that moment, as did Fupa, but mostly Tech was, like, super, super excited about it. So even though it was scripted, it did feel kind of, like, fun to watch them hit their goal. They ended up doing, like, getting into the pool or something like that. So there was like this really large pool at the camp where the water was a little on the chillier side, so they kept like daring each other to get into it or whatever. But they got into the pool, they were like hugging. By they, I mean Tech and Fupa. Tech and Fupa were like hugging. Keem was all excited. Like, it was a moment. It was kind of cute and fun, even though it was like just drummed up for people to send money. So, you know, whatever. Like, I hope that makes sense to you guys. Like, just as a human, seeing other people celebrate makes me very excited. So I liked that part. I didn't like the fact that it was all made up for money. What makes it even funnier is that not too long before this, Amber was able to orchestrate her own show. And so she does a little test show with just her and Thick Gemini. And I think Christina might have been on it as well at that time, but I don't know if it might have been just her and Gemini or whatever. But that earned like no money at all. And then to see the $7,000 stream from her show that she should have been on was kind of like, I don't know. It was just something that you had to be there, but the vibes were just impeccable. We went through like months of really boring crap on the LCU to finally get to this moment where, even though it was orchestrated and scripted and, you know, whatever, it was kind of fun to see Amber have to face the fact that her show was not successful and the show that she was trying to disband had the most successful night on the LCU. But the excitement is very short-lived because, surprise, surprise, Tech is not fired because of the goal that they hit, and he's able to continue being on LCU bus. Also, they start talking about Fupa and Phantom's relationship drama, and it's just so gross. Like, people are constantly asking what they've done, what base they've gotten to. Amber especially is being very unbearable during this period of time because she keeps insinuating that Fupa is just in it for the money and she's stringing Phantom along unless she's getting to a certain level of physicality. And while I do think that Fupa was stringing Phantom along, I also think it's really gross to say, oh, well, if somebody gives you this amount of money, you're expected to physically reciprocate in this way. Like, that is not a mentality that I will ever co-sign on. The last thing I have to say about March is that Emily did visit Amber, which was the other reason she gave for not going to Fat Camp, which obviously could have been rescheduled for any time, so that's a stupid excuse. But while Emily was visiting, they did go out to glow-in-the-dark bingo with Mama Lynn, and Emily stamped a little bingo dauber on Amberlynn's ring finger, and people were freaking out thinking Amber got engaged, but she said at the time that it was something that her and Emily do all the time and that it didn't mean anything. And to me, that was obviously the case. So there was this little like mini engagement scandal where maybe Amber was getting engaged, but it was a big nothing burger. And even Amber herself didn't try to drum it up or make it seem like something that it wasn't. So I don't know what the big hype and ordeal with that was, but regardless, that was pretty much the end of March. All right, you guys, so this part's already really, really long. I think we hit just over an hour so far, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. If there's anything you feel that I missed from the first 3 months, please leave it in the comments below so that people who are watching this video who were not part of Gorlworld at this time can see what they missed out on. I did some research to kind of refresh my memory, and then I filled in with things that I remembered from being there, but obviously I can't get everything all in one video. I don't have like the memory for that, nor did I want to make a 16-part series because the whole point of it is I want people to be able to watch this and catch up very quickly. So I didn't want to do like a whole deep dive like how Snowflake does where you have to watch hours and hours and hours. I wanted it to just be like, maybe 2 hours for the whole first half of the year. So like I said, just leave stuff in the comments below if you think that I missed anything, and hopefully I will have the second part of this video out very soon, but it does take me time to research and make notes on everything that happened, so I can't promise that it's going to be out this week or anything like that. It's probably going to be next week, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, you already know. Stay Delulu, but not that Delulu. I'll catch you in the next one.